regarding a certain matter.
Published in 1876. Chapter 1. The moment you bring up our impoverished literature and modern writing, someone inevitably fires back the same answer, delivered through a lazy yawn and with almost wicked pleasure. Today's writers simply use inferior language. I more or less agree with that, but it leaves me wondering, do we even have a language left to disapprove of? I am aware, readers, that at first many of you will dismiss my seemingly groundless question as ridiculous. But listen, I'll explain, and I want you to follow me carefully without haste. I already know that whatever I have to say will disappoint you, leave you feeling sad and uneasy. Yet, reader, you are unaware that every word in the letter that follows was written in blood. Why bother, you ask? Because my brothers and sisters, as our poet once said, speech shrinks sorrow. Chapter 2. The moment a poor Georgian writer picks up a pen, he lets out a deep sigh and asks himself, "Who am I writing for?" His blood turning cold in his veins. And honestly, who is there to talk to? Everyone, they'll tell me. Yes, all good and fair. But what do we Georgians have in common that allows the writer to spread his wings and make you feel the shared sorrow or delight you with the collective bliss? You may think that being Georgian is our shared anguish and glory. Indeed, it should be. But what is a Georgian? Or what does it mean to be Georgian? I wonder, do we even exist anymore? Of course we do, you will assure me with scorn. I am certain, my reader, that if you had not already reduced your humanity and courage to a filthy rag, my question would wound you deeply. I feel the grief that makes you groan. But know this, you must be brave to hear the bitter truth. Do you not see that we are trapped in misery? Heed me. Chapter 3. If you carefully analyze that moss-covered puddle we jokingly call life, much to everyone's amusement, and in which we splash about with a certain unrelenting glee, a puddle that gives birth to thousands of colorful streams flowing in different directions, and the farther they move from each other, the weaker they become. If you look at this puddle closely, with your eyes wide open, you will inevitably say with me through sobs, "Do we even exist anymore?" A reckless man, eager to rid himself of unpleasant thoughts as quickly as possible, will hastily reply, "You must be blind. Our capital and its foundlings, its settlements stretched between the Black and Caspian Seas, are Georgian, aren't they? The capital may well be called a mother and the settlements her foundlings, but the trouble is this, the mother's milk has dried up, and the child can no longer suckle at her breast." Chapter 4. So do you tell me they are definitely Georgians? Sure, they are princes, nobles, priests, merchants, peasants, the titled and the titleless. But a Georgian is nowhere to be found. The prince hates the noble is averse to the prince, and the peasant despises them both. Are these Georgians, children of the same mother, belonging to the same Georgian family? Each has a world of his own. Are they truly Georgians grown from the same seed? The prince's ideas are unfit for the noble, and the noble's for the prince, and both are unfit for the peasant. Are they Georgians, in body and soul, raised at the breast of the same mother, Georgia? Asom Tavruli stands in the way of Makedruli. The prince turns his back on the noble on the prince, and both on the peasant. The merchant drains all three with the same greed. Does anyone truly believe that any of them, individually or together, are Georgian? Georgia is a collective name, yet all those mentioned share nothing in common. We roll about separately, some this way, some that, like pieces of a broken chain. Tell me, does anyone truly believe that, taken individually, we are Georgians? Show me the place where everyone's roads come together for the good of all Georgia, and then I will say, there is a Georgian. Point out that one goal toward which all our individual minds, thoughts, feelings, and wishes move in unison, joyfully and steadfastly for the benefit of all Georgia, and then I will say with you, there is a Georgian. Show me a shared happiness, or at least a common grief, but no, My joy is mine alone, and your sorrow is none of my concern. Georgian is a collective name, and I ask you, what do we truly share? We only know me or you or me, but never both of us. Go on, shout, "Hey, Georgian!" The only person who will turn to look at you between the Black Sea and the Caspian will be some pot-bellied Georgian, i.e. a fellow from the Gori district. Or, in the worst case, a Kakali might jerk his thick neck in your direction. The others won't even stir, as if you weren't calling to them at all, as if they were not Georgians in the least. That binding, glorious, universal idea we were all meant to recognize in being Georgian, the name we once shared, has shattered and evaporated from our minds. Georgian has become an individual label for tiny corner dwellers, not a common name for a people who once suffered side by side, who pulled the heavy yoke of Georgia's bloody history like brothers, in joy and in sorrow, who spoke one language in celebration and in mourning, and who today use that same language, if they are not too busy doing nothing, to snitch on their own brethren before God or man. Chapter 5. Imereli, Guruli, Megreli, Kartleli, Kakali. These separately adopted, individually embraced, divisive names are clear proof of the argument I have made above. This is common in all other nations, you'll tell me. True, but nowhere to the same disheartening degree as with us. In other countries where each person has not severed the deep-rooted bond with their own people, whether in body or in soul, such names are used only to distinguish them from one another internally, not before the entire world. Of course, a Frenchman who lives in Marseille will tell another Frenchman that he is from Marseille and will introduce himself as French to a foreigner. This means he is from Marseille in France, and he is French to the outside world. To the foreigner, he is simply one among a people who live in a place where all live for one, and each person lives for the good of all. This means, my strength is the strength of my people. My kindness is my people's virtue. My blood stirs together with that of all the French. The life force of France is also mine, and by feeling my pulse, you can know the measure of the French nation's well-being. It means that an insult cast at me by a stranger is an insult to my people, and an insult to my kinsmen is an insult to me. What about us? Ah, reader, what can I tell you? You know perfectly well that Georgian is no longer the shared name of our tribe, neither within Georgia nor beyond it, neither among friends nor among foes. The Imereli is Imereli, the Guruli is Guruli, the Megreli is Megreli, the Kartleli is Kartleli, and all together they are still not Georgians. Woe to the people whose common bond is shattered. Woe to the country without shared blood, where all are not for one and one is not for all, where one doesn't think of all and all don't care for one, where I is heard far more often than we. Chapter 6. We have scattered, fallen apart, broken down into little pieces, and this disintegration, this separation in all things and everywhere, has brought upon us the same fate that befell the single stick in Aesop's fable, the one that could not be broken when bound together in a bundle. Undoubtedly, in such a state we could not hope to preserve our shared name, and alas, we have not. Since the glorious idea of being Georgian slipped out of our collective mind, we have become hollow, and our body and soul have crumbled. Our reason, like anything hollow, grew narrow and weak, and it clearly could no longer bear any universal or far-reaching ideas. All our notions, thoughts, wishes, and feelings shrank, and our intellect and values declined. Since then, whatever problem we took on, we could not handle. Whatever we examined, we could not encompass with our minds. So we broke everything apart into as many small fragments as our individual strength could bear, for we no longer had the common shoulder on which to carry the whole. As I mentioned before, we divided the collective name of our people into 5 or 6 pieces. Our mind could not hold the unifying idea behind that name, could not carry it. As a result, it took the name, and the idea attached to it, to refer only to a small group of people. Thus, the word Georgian, once a collective term, was given a narrow meaning. The same thing happened to the word homeland. Chapter 7. Homeland. The word has an all-encompassing and expansive meaning. Where people is not an empty notion, and the plague of dissociation has not yet spread, this word is a life-giving spirit, the shared pulse felt on a common wrist. There, at the mere mention of this word, each person envisions the joy and sorrow of the whole, and the people as a collective thinks of every individual member. There, the word moves everyone, great or small, man or woman, to mourn the common grief, to feel the common joy, to celebrate the shared bliss. There, the word embraces both the entire people and each individual. What about us? With us, that word once held the same meaning. Do you know when? When my eye and your eye served the whole people together? And what about now? You will ask me, reader. Why even ask? You know perfectly well that today this magnificent name means nothing more than our individual property, not the home of an entire people, a home fortified not with stone and lime, but with the blood and bones of our forefathers. There is no homeland anymore. Where the body weakens, the soul follows. We have distanced ourselves from one another, and since we are each far smaller and weaker than all of Georgia together, our individual idea of the whole has shrunk, diminished. Our empty, narrow mind could not grasp the universal grand idea behind that majestic name. Upon hearing the word homeland, today's pygmies picture their dung-covered patch of farmland. Today, to fight for the homeland means to fight over complaints filed in court about some stamped papers. Triumph for the homeland means a properly verified favorable verdict. Securing a homeland means a wattle fence around a vineyard. Respect for the homeland means manure spread as fertilizer over the cropland. And countryman is nothing more than a name for the farmer. Chapter 8. As the saying goes, one cannot dry the sea with a spoon. Really? One cannot? Then where is the all-encompassing, universal, inspiring meaning of the word homeland? I repeat, we broke apart, and no single person could carry the great meaning of homeland on his shoulders, what the whole could easily support together. Separation hollowed and narrowed the mind, and it could no longer bear the grand idea contained in that word. And what did we do then? We took the homeland, our collective home, and broke it into tiny crumbs that our pygmy strength could haul and our shriveled minds could contain. We destroyed our common family, once supported by the shared shoulder of all Georgia, and from its shattered pieces we built little huts that would fit only ourselves, and our empty mind and reason, and then we called them homeland. We demolished our fathers' graves and shattered our children's cradles. We dismantled the very idea of homeland, fashioned little ones for ourselves, and thus once again proved the words of Rustavelli true. One can only give birth to his likeness. Each and every one of us fenced off our own separate piece of the great homeland. There we built our private little world, called it by the collective name homeland, and said, "If I am not here, let not one stone rest upon another." In this way, we locked ourselves inside our fenced-off corners with our own joy and our own grief. And since each of us turned our eyes away from the common work and ceased to exercise our mind on what is universal, it grew so blind that it can no longer extend beyond the private fence, not even enough to reach out to a fellow human being. Chapter 9. Now, my reader, you worry and grieve for your homeland, and I for mine. We each have our own separate, personal, private concerns. How, then, could we possibly bring our ideas together? Since we know that our ideas cannot be reconciled, we do not come together for discourse. And why would we gather to speak with one another? Conversation is an exchange of ideas. I have nothing in common with you that would allow for dialogue, for an exchange of thought. Since you have called yourself an Imereli, and I have called myself a Kakeli, I have nothing to discuss with you, nor you with me. Since you have called your farmland, and especially your private property, your homeland, and I have called mine my homeland, we have no shared thought left to speak about. That is why we parted ways. You went one direction, I went another, and since then we have not spoken. A long period without communication, whether through words or through ideas, has driven us far apart. We have grown unaccustomed to each other's speech. You either do not understand my words, or, if you do, you misinterpret them, and I misinterpret yours. Thus, we cannot recognize a Georgian, even though we all speak Georgian. Why did this happen? Because we have become separated in all things. Because we privatized thought and everything else, and with that, the word, which is the sign of a thing and of an idea, has also become private. That is why our language has turned into a dialect, full of parables and double speak, where the same word has taken on multiple meanings. What can I say that you will not attach your own dialect to? If I say, please taste it, you may twist this simple, solid word into something vulgar, should you choose to, especially if you have taken part in the wickedness of the human heart. And if you say to me, please come in, yes, it is a polite expression, but it is up to me whether I interpret it as courtesy or as an insult. Just now I used the phrase up to, as you have used it thousands of times yourself, yet I fear that some fool might assign to it a meaning soaked in his own corrupt and sinful mind. Chapter 10. Where is the Georgian language now? Do we even need Georgian when we have abandoned the very idea of being Georgian, to our own ruin? We do not use reason, so how are we to use language to express ideas? We are not for unity, so how can we demand a universal meaning for a word from our language? And even if you do manage to convey a thought through language and through words, it does you no good. Who among us expects reason from language anymore? We are empty, and we crave empty words, empty sounds, so that the word whistles uselessly in our mouths and our ears itch from the noise. Why else would we need language? The collective name Georgian we turned into a private label. Homeland we reduced to dung-covered ruins of an old homestead. Respect into manure. Head into a pumpkin, and we have rejected our humanity so much that we cannot understand the word man unless we add manly to it. After all this, do you still think we need a language? Chapter 11. Since our separation, we have not used reason in our lives, and because the tongue still wanted to move in the mouth out of habit, we seized the senseless animal sounds we heard around our huts and turned them into gibberish Georgian words. Thank God we have managed to survive this long using those words. That is why our language is full of animalistic, nature-born sounds, and why it has not gained even a single word that indicates reason. For example, we have thousands of words like puffing, huffing, whiffing, sniffing, prattling, snuffing, snorting, snuffling, cackling, crackling, squealing, squeaking, squalling, squawking, and thousands more similar words stuffed into our senseless, miserable language, stripped of its foundation. Where is the Georgian language? The Georgians broke apart, and so did our homeland. Where, then, was the Georgian language supposed to take root for universal reasoning? I repeat myself. What do I have in common with you that would allow us to think together and create shared words and a shared language for exchanging ideas? You do you, I'll do me, the brothers said to one another, nodding coldly. We went our separate ways without shedding a single tear. We uttered our last shared word, mshvidobit, for the final time. You went one way, I the other, alone, apart. And who knows when we will meet again? When we will once more greet each other with our universal fraternal gamarjoba, my long-lost brother or sister?